Hi, welcome back to the Blythe Sew-a-long. Today is day 2. We're going to be doing our shoulder seams and our sleeves. We're going to start by taking our bodice right sides together and lining up those raw edges of the shoulder, and then we're going to clip them in place. And now once you have them clipped together, we're going to take this over to our machine and sew them together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now you can press your seams towards the back if you'd like, and we're ready to get started on our sleeves. Now we're going to create a memory hem on our sleeves by pressing up those bottom raw edges 1/2 inch. That's going to make it so that the sleeves are easier to hem when we're finished. So now that we have the memory hems finished on both of our sleeves, we're going to take it over to the machine and run some gathering stitches in between those two markings. And I'm going to do a row at 1/4 inch away from the raw edge, and then another row 5/8 inch away from the raw edge. So now we have our 2 rows of gathering stitches on our first sleeve, so we're going to repeat those steps for the second sleeve. Now it's time to attach our sleeves to our bodice. We're going to start by opening up our bodice, keeping it right sides up. Then we're going to take one of our sleeves and we're going to match up that center notch with the shoulder seam. And I like to place a clip there. Then I'm going to line up the sides of the sleeve. So I'm going to place a clip at both of the opposite ends and clip in place. And then I'm going to clip the section up until the gathering stitches. So I'm going to place some clips along those raw edges up until I get to the gathering stitches. Now once I have all the non-gathered sections of the sleeves clipped in place, I'm going to remove that center clip, that's the notch and the shoulder seam, and I'm going to gather my sleeve by pulling on the bobbin threads until it fits. And then I'm going to recenter that notch over that center seam and replace that clip that we took off. Now we're going to repeat those same steps for the other sleeve, where we line up that center notch to the seam, clip the non-gathered part, and then we're going to gather that section, reclip it in place, and then it's time to baste our sleeves on. Now with our sleeves clipped in place, I'm going to take it over to my regular sewing machine and baste it on. I like to baste things first often before I use my serger because it's really easy to make mistakes with the serger. So I'm going to baste my sleeves on. That way you can make sure that everything stays in place and nothing got bunched up under the sewing machine or anything like that, so that your gathers stay nice and even. And I'm basting it on with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to repeat those same steps for the other sleeve, basting it on at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, keeping our basting threads out of the way, and then making sure everything's lined up correctly. Now that our sleeves are basted on, we're going to check and make sure that nothing got pinched or that everything stayed lined up nice and neat, and then we're going to run it through our serger at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you don't have a serger, that's okay, because you can do this with just a regular sewing machine too. So we're just going to do the permanent stitch after this, after we make sure that everything's lined up correctly. You can even clip those threads if you want to. Now I'm just running it through my serger at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure that the bodice stays nice and flat underneath and that nothing gets bunched up along the way. Now I'm doing the same thing for the second side, and you're going to notice that I'm going to be taking my scissors. That's because I noticed that it did get bunched up while I was basting my sleeve on, and that just goes to show you the importance of basting it on, because if I had done that with my serger, I would have had to unpick stitches, possibly serged a hole in my sleeve, and it could have been a big huge mess. So I'm a big advocate of basting things on first. It just takes a little bit of extra time, but it makes a huge difference, because there's nothing more frustrating than making a mistake. So now with our sleeves attached, I'm just going to go through one more time and make sure that everything got lined up nice and neat and that nothing got bunched up. And then I'm going to remove my gathering stitches. Now we have our sleeves attached, and after double checking and making sure everything is to our liking, it's time to move on to day 3, which is going to be our side seams. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you tomorrow.